Fair use. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statutes that might otherwise be infringing.
Along the South Carolina coast, where the sea breathes in slow, ancient rhythm, and salt hangs thick in the air, lies a small barrier island with a ghostly secret. This is Pawley's Island. Pawley's quiet, windswept, and deceptively serene. But when the skies darken and the tides turn violent, something else walks these sands. A phantom dressed in gray, a warning before the storm, a figure the locals call the Gray Man. Pawley's Island sits along the Waccamaw Neck, a slender thread of sand and marshland that has faced the fury of the Atlantic for centuries. It's one of the oldest resort areas on the East Coast, a peaceful refuge for Lowcountry families since the 1700s. Back then, wealthy rice planters built their summer homes here, fleeing the inland heat and disease. They came for the salt air and ocean breezes, believing the coast was a place of safety. But this land was never safe. It was, and still is, a front line where beauty meets destruction. Barrier islands shift, tides erode them, and hurricanes come without mercy. Over 2 centuries, countless storms have struck this narrow coast. The Great Hurricane of 1822, Hazel in 1954, Hugo in 1989, Florence in 2018, Ian in 2022. For every generation, the ocean has delivered devastation. And with every major storm, witnesses claim the same warning appears before it. A man, silent, pale, dressed in gray. The legend begins, as all legends do, with tragedy. The year was 1822. A young man rowed across the marshes, desperate to reunite with his fiancée at Pawley's Island. Some say he had just returned from sea. Others claim he was a plantation heir racing to see the woman he loved before a great storm. But the marsh had other plans. His horse sank deep into pluff mud, that thick, sticky low-country clay, and both rider and animal were swallowed whole. He never reached the island. Days later, the young woman, grief-stricken, saw him again, standing outside her family's beach cottage, his clothes gray, his face pale. He raised a hand, but spoke no words. Moments later, he vanished. Frightened, she begged her family to leave. They packed what they could and fled inland. Days after, the hurricane of 1822 struck. It flattened nearly every structure on Pawley's Island. When the family returned, their home was still standing. Everything else was gone. And so began the legend of the Gray Man, the ghost who warns those he loves to flee before the storm. Since that night, Pawley's Island has whispered the same story, generation after generation. The Gray Man is said to appear on the beach just before powerful hurricanes strike the South Carolina coast. He doesn't speak. He doesn't threaten. He simply appears, still, calm, and gray, before disappearing into thin air. Those who see him and listen to his warning are spared. Those who ignore him often lose everything. Local historian Elizabeth Robertson Hunsinger, who spent decades collecting ghost stories of the Lowcountry, calls him the friendliest ghost in South Carolina. Not a spirit of vengeance, but of protection. A ghost not born of hatred, but of love. Over the last 2 centuries, dozens of people have claimed to see the gray man. Some dismiss it as folklore. Others swear their lives were saved because of him. One of the most famous sightings came in September 1989, just days before Hurricane Hugo roared ashore as a Category 4 storm. Jim and Clara Moore were walking the beach one afternoon when they saw a man approaching. He wore gray clothing and seemed to glide more than walk. Jim raised his hand to wave. The man nodded and then vanished. There were no footprints, no trace. The Moores felt a chill. Something told them to leave. They evacuated that evening. When Hugo hit, Pawley's Island was obliterated. But their home, the one they'd left behind, still stood. Neighbors who stayed weren't so lucky. In 2018, just before Hurricane Florence, a new image went viral. A Pawley's Island resident captured footage of the oceanfront during heavy winds. In the distance, a gray, human-shaped figure stood near the dunes. When the camera panned back, it was gone. The video circulated online. Some said it was fog, others called it digital artifact. But for the locals of Pawley's, it was a sign. The gray man was walking again. And days later, Hurricane Florence flooded the coast. Once again, the legend had returned with the storm. So who, or what, is the gray man? There are theories. Some say he's the spirit of that young lover lost in the 1820-22 marshes. Others believe he's the ghost of Plowden Charles Jenneret Weston, a plantation owner and early summer resident of Pawley's Island, whose home, the Pelican Inn, still stands today. A few claim he's a Confederate soldier, doomed to wander the dunes after dying in battle. But one thing never changes. The gray man appears only before hurricanes, and always to warn. He's not bound by vengeance or revenge. He doesn't chase or torment. He exists in the still space between disaster and mercy, a symbol of protection for those who listen. A ghost with purpose. A myth that saves. The South Carolina coastline is no stranger to hurricanes. From Charleston to Georgetown, this stretch of land is battered more frequently than nearly anywhere else on the East Coast. The warm waters of the Atlantic feed massive storms that roll inland, reshaping dunes, eroding marshes, flooding rivers. Meteorologists call Pawley's Island a high-risk hurricane zone. The locals simply call it home. Over time, the gray man has become a kind of spiritual meteorologist, a reminder that nature always warns us before it strikes. And maybe, in that sense, the legend exists because people needed him. In a time before weather satellites and radar, when farmers and fishermen relied on instinct and superstition, the gray man became the embodiment of intuition itself. A warning you could see with your own eyes. A sign that it was time to go. Today, the gray man isn't just a ghost story. He's part of Pawley's Island's identity, woven into its culture, tourism, and sense of resilience. You'll find his image on murals, postcards, even local businesses. The legend is told on ghost walks and in Lowcountry storytelling festivals every October. But the people who live here still speak of him quietly. They don't mock the legend. They honor it. Because in Pawley's Island, every hurricane season is a reminder. The line between myth and survival can be thin. And sometimes, listening to a ghost might just save your life. Every culture has its guardian spirits, souls who linger not to harm, but to help. The gray man is one of those rare legends where the ghost isn't feared, he's respected. Psychologists call this collective folklore response a way for communities to humanize danger, to make chaos understandable. When faced with the uncontrollable force of a hurricane, it helps to believe that something or someone is trying to protect you. And in a strange way, maybe that belief works. Because if the gray man makes people leave earlier, if he inspires caution where complacency lives, then his legend saves lives, whether he's real or not. Imagine it now, the night before a hurricane. The air thick and heavy, the sky bruised, green and gray, the ocean angry, the gulls gone silent. You walk the shoreline one last time, and there, in the distance, a solitary figure stands, motionless, gray coat, eyes fixed on the horizon. He lifts his hand once, as if to say, "Go." You blink, and he's gone. The wind rises, the sea roars, and you remember his warning. The gray man still walks these shores. He walks before the deluge. He walks when the air goes still and the sky forgets its color. If you see him, listen, because the storm always follows.
If you don't like the dark but still crave a thrill, then delve into South Carolina's eerie past with us. Subscribe to South Carolina Secrets and uncover the legends lurking in the night. Have a story that chills you to the bone. Comment below with your haunting tales and what secrets we should unveil next, if you dare.